a particular record. Uh, you also have to show that the business has a handbook or some sort of employee procedures for dealing with uh, development, training of vets, women, etc. Uh, Proof of experience is key. Now, it seems sort of counterintuitive that you would have a program where you encourage social equity applicants to apply. But in many instances, the social equity applicant has no experience in this particular area. Matter of fact, the community that we may be wanting to get involved in this industry the most probably has very little business experience. So what's encouraged is that you partner with a business entity that does have experience in this area. Now remember that in order to qualify as a social equity applicant, you must control at least 51% of that business. So you want to merge your strengths with the strengths of a professional that's already doing it. Now I will say this, and I'll take some liberty to share. When we ventured forward on this, we did partner with an entity out of Colorado who has extensive experience. The name is Nobo. Extensive experience in both Colorado and Michigan, but on the medical marijuana side, not on the recreational side. So we're merging our two talents to see if our application will be strong enough for victory. And then, of course, I talk about experience not only in the cultivation of agricultural, horticultural operations, but also your experience in business practices. So although you may not be an expert in the marijuana or cannabis growth area, as long as you can show that you've got some business skills that will help satisfy some of that criteria. Now, why are these things important that I'm talking about? I'm talking about requirements for the application. Each one of these areas that I'm discussing right now has a point tally associated with it. So I believe there's going to be from sections A to sections Q or S. I want to say it's S. Each one of those sections will have a certain number of points that you can build up in order to try to win a license. Now, what I don't know at this point is, I don't know from the state side what that number is that will allow you to at least get over the hump for award. But there are point tallies associated with this area. In addition, for each one of these areas I'm discussing, there's going to be a certain number of pages that you will be allowed to respond to a particular answer. So in some instances, there'll be an unlimited number of pages that you can provide a narrative to explain your strengths and weaknesses of your company and the personnel that will be running your business. To give you an idea, when we submitted our application, we submitted a document that was over 11,000 pages long. So again, you see the labor-intensive work that goes into this, not only from the drafting, but to the collating, to the review of the document, etc. So be prepared to have at least the time set aside to do that and the personnel or professionals that you need in order to put the application together. Next slide, please. Security is going to be key. They are very, very concerned on the applications about security based on the areas that you're going to be located, the product that you'll be dealing with, even internally how you'll track the plants that are being grown in the facility. They want to see your plans associated with that. And your plan is going to be graded. It's part of one of the sections that I just described. They also want to know about your knowledge of cultivation and the advances in the technology associated with growth. Remember, this is not an outdoor farm. This is going to be held in a structure. So they want to see if you are aware of the things that you need in order to run a successful cannabis growth business inside of a structure. They want to see the degrees, the certificates, the educational background, the relevant experience that you have from both the board level, the principals, and the agents in order to run a successful business. By the way, anybody that has at least a 5% interest, financial interest in the business must provide their background information. So there'll be, and I'm sure for those of you who have done work with government entities in the past, you'll have to provide some sort of economic disclosure statement showing if you have any kind of conflicts that may render your application non-responsive. Next, please. Yes, from an environmental standpoint, I know if you are currently looking at the opportunity of becoming a craft grower, you're looking at the expenses that are necessary once you get that license, when you're running the facility. How much is it going to cost me to provide water and energy, et cetera? For those of you who have done a little research on this, you know that there's going to be a heavy usage of water and electricity. And they want to see in the application, what are your plans for sustainability? How are you going to be able to recycle or reuse certain products or water, energy, or are you going to be generating your own energy? It's possible that some of these facilities might have solar panels and they're generating their own energy. But there are systems in place that are being used in other states that will provide good sustainability outcomes, but the technology is expensive. When I went to Colorado and took a look at a craft grow facility there, the facility was about 10,000 square feet, and they had $1 million temperature heating system to filter out contaminants in the air, moisture, et cetera, because the one thing they fight against is mold of the product. So be ready to take a look at what some of those back room expenses are, and heck, for $1 million, it's not necessarily the back room; that's the living room, you know. So you don't want to be surprised by some of the hidden costs that you may not have thought about. In addition, waste that comes about. So particularly the act is concerned about cannabis waste, and it's and you might be saying, what's that waste? Well, it could be the stalks, it could be twigs that still carry THC. It's still a drug, so you still have to be mindful of how that is disposed of. And there are provisions in the act where they want to see that any unusable cannabis product is grinded down and then mixed in with other compostable materials so that it can be disposed of without being able to be used as a drug. And of course, you've got to commit to, in the signing of the application, that you will follow all state, federal laws associated with the removal of waste from the facility. Next slide. So we talked those things that I just outlined in terms of documentation. Again, I related to you that it could be thousands of pages worth of materials that you're looking at. Now I'm going to focus just a little bit on how they're going to be looking at the scoring of the application. The things you see listed here is suitability of the proposed facility, training, record keeping. These are all things that you're going to be graded on. And one of the things I'm going to do is I've got a document here that's a copy of the most recent application for the craft grow facility. I want our participants on the line today to be able to see how, this is a 14-page document, how the state is grading each one of these sections. If you want to play the numbers game with this, you want to make sure you get with a social equity applicant to maximize the point tallies as much as possible. It would be great if you could look to see how you could use partnerships to satisfy as many of these categories as possible, i.e. for vets, i.e. for the social equity applicant, for the location of the facility, etc. It is a point game, and you want to try to build up as many points as possible. So everything that I've shown on the bottom, these are some of the critical areas that they're looking at for grading to make sure that the business is sustainable and viable. Next slide, please. The top bullet where you see the 20% of total available points, that is directly related to the social equity applicant piece. Matter of fact, I think I cheated a little bit on mine, and I wanted to share with you how many points these things add up to be, so that you understand. You want to try to build as many points as possible. So if you take a look at labor employment practices, It's asking of the business itself, do you have in-house policies that promote the growth of minorities, women, people with disabilities, etc. Uh, this is designed to help people expand their economic opportunity that in the past may not have had that type of opportunity. So as a lawyer, you know, I get up in a courtroom and you tell a story. You have to tell a story, and you want to think about what the end of that story is in order to make sure that you fill in all the gaps along the way until you get to the end. This is a story where you want to sit down, pen to paper for each one of the sections to show how you're going to be uplifting a community in the business venture that you're putting forth. So how are you helping those folks that have been victims of these massive arrests dealing with marijuana convictions? How are you helping with the hiring of folks from the communities that have been affected by these areas? As I mentioned before, our business, we pride ourselves on being a second chance employer. So it was easy for us to show that at least 51% of our employees came from these affected areas. So we were able to qualify as a special equity applicant. Matter of fact, every employee that we have, including myself, because I live in an area that qualifies for special equity applicant, isn't a special equity applicant employee, which fits into that category and allowed us to take on that status. We can move on to the next slide. So, as I mentioned before, this is the act itself is a 288-page document. I provided you, so for background information, a summary of 5 pages that will help you get through where you might find the biggest bang for your buck. Maybe this isn't your category. Maybe craft grow isn't something that you want to do, but you could see yourself creating a business that would deliver the product or provide some sort of transportation that would be suitable. And let's just say this, there's nothing written down right now that says, this is the type of transportation company you must create. No, this is a very creative marketplace. In some jurisdictions outside of the state of Illinois, they actually have home delivery of products. So from the dispensary to the actual individual home, there's a business opportunity there. For those folks that want to do infusion and have been doing it undercover, now they can come out from under the covers and provide their cookies and their donuts and their whatever they do to infuse the product. And I believe there's actually a TV show on Netflix that provides examples of cooking with the product. And then I've also provided the application, or at least a copy of that application, so you can see the point tallies and the number of pages that you will have to respond to each one of these sections. Some there's no page limitation. Others that they are setting a page limitation. People could go on and on trying to win a license. Next page, please. Again, just as a summary, this is a very labor-intensive process. We worked on this application and completing the application for over 4 months. We hired legal consultants. We hired writers. I myself got involved in the process to review the materials. So these are all hours that were spent working on a particular task that costs money for a business. So you have to make sure that you've got the resources that you can dedicate to get this particular license done. I did want to say too that for the first round of awards, if you're fortunate enough to have bid on and you're now waiting to see if you've won an award, let's say you bid on multiple different applications, you will only be eligible to win on one of those awards. In the second series of awards, you can have 2 affiliations. So it could be you won one in the past, you can only win an additional one. And that doesn't mean that you own 100%. It's any interest you may have in that business. So it could be 5%, 10%. That's it. You can't go beyond that. Now, January 1st of 2022, they'll allow you to have 3 such interests in a craft growing business. We can go to the next slide. Now, open for questions.
Well, if we can If we can hold off on questions
Yeah,
until the end.
I will say this, though, Chairman, I do have on the last page, I've got my name, number. If there's somebody that wants to, after we get off the presentation and they didn't have a chance to ask a question, please take that down. I'm assuming that a copy of the presentation will be available. Feel free to call me. I can give you some one-on-one war stories and hopefully a victory lap if we win an award later on. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Montel. And we're going to just move right into our next presenter, Mr. Ross Morreale, who is the co-founder, and he is initially and the longest serving chairman of the Medical Cannabis Alliance of Illinois, the primary industry association in Illinois, consisting of a strong majority of the existing medical cannabis permit holders. He's going to give you a good overview into the cost for submitting the application. And so Ross, take it away.
Thanks, Alderman Jenkins, for the invite along. I also want to thank the Quad City African American Chamber of Commerce for the opportunity to talk about cannabis. First off, I think Montel did a great job of laying out the act and the technical parts of the application. And I'm going to focus more on the application requirements, some issues that may arise, deadlines for submission, future and the ones that are in the past, and opportunities in that area. So first off, my background is I'm an attorney. I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, been involved in a bunch of different types of businesses. I was co-founder of Ataraxia back in 2014. We applied for cultivation. I was one of the original 16 companies that were awarded a cultivation license. We were first to market in that time period. That company is now Verano. We're in 12 states, I believe, and one of the largest companies, cannabis companies in the country. My partner, so the other co-founder, has been the CEO from day one, and he's doing a fabulous job of running that, which frees me up to do other stuff. I was also co-founder of the Medical Cannabis Alliance of Illinois and chairman for the initial 3 years. Since then, I've focused on personal business interests in the cannabis space, as well as started a consulting firm that helps social equity applicants and other applicants that are interested in obtaining new licenses. We offer operational support. It's a full gamut of services that any cannabis company would need at any phase in the process. I can touch on that a little bit later. But as Montel mentioned briefly, the most recent applications that were submitted, the dispensaries, the 75 adult use dispensaries that were divided up through the various BLS regions throughout the state, those were due January 2nd. The deadline to announce those has been extended, the winners of those, due to coronavirus and the ensuing shutdown. But we expect those to be coming out this summer at some point. I don't have any guidance on that further than what Montel had mentioned. But I do know that this was an important program for the governor and for the administration. The state needs tax revenue now more than anything. They want to empower social equity entrepreneurs. So I think that as soon as possible, they're going to issue those. So I'm hopeful that that's what happens. As far as the production licenses, which is a general category that I refer to when I'm referring to craft grows and infuser licenses, those were originally due April 30th. And then March 16th. And that was extended to April 30th by the governor to coincide with the stay-at-home orders. No guidance on when those are going to be awarded. The statute requires them to be awarded before July 1st. I would anticipate that's not going to happen, although I don't know, only because the application period was delayed 6 weeks. I would expect at least a 6-week delay in the announcement, but that's just my personal opinion. I don't have any special information related to that. There's some future licenses that the state must issue, the various agencies must issue. There's also some potential licenses in point C that may be issued pending certain things. The future shall issue deadlines are December of 2021. There shall be 110 more dispensary licenses issued. There shall be, I believe it's 40 more craft grow licenses issued. and 40 more infuser licenses issued. And then I believe they're going to have another round of unlimited dispensary transporter applications then too, or earlier next year. I believe that's going to be an annual opportunity to apply for those licenses, since there's no competitive nature to them. You simply achieve, I believe, 750 points out of 1,000, and you should be awarded a transporter license, which is a great opportunity. It's the one with the least barriers to entry from a application standpoint. And there's opportunities, as Montel alluded to, flexibility in that space. I mean, is delivery going to be in the future for Illinois? Probably. It's not there now, but I think an entrepreneurial-minded transporter group could create something. There's going to be a lot of craft growers and infusers that aren't going to want to incur the costs of getting vehicles to transport. So there's potentially 80 companies later this year that will be in need of transportation services. And then obviously the existing companies may as well. That might be a harder sell since they're all already doing it, but there'll definitely be opportunities. So all those must be issued by December of 2021. And they may do them sooner. That could happen in the summer. There's no indication on when the application periods will start for those. The law just requires that they shall be issued by December of 2021. Beyond that, beyond the 75 dispensary licenses that are pending now, the 110 that shall be issued by December of 2021, the state has the authority to issue, I believe, up to 200 more licenses for a total of 500 capped in the state. But that can only occur, and those are May issues, so there's no obligation or requirement for the state to do that. So I believe there'll be a political conversation in 2022 based on the disparity study that the act required to be conducted to identify if there is disparity in the cannabis industry in Illinois, and then what steps should be taken to alter the application process as it currently stands to remedy those disparities. And then in that, they could authorize 25 more, 50 more, 100 more, or 200 more, and they could break it up in any amount of tranches they want over any number of years. But the law does authorize up to 200 more beyond the ones that shall be issued. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there. You know, for the 185 social equity licenses that are awarded between this phase and next phase, you know, it's going to be added competition for those social equity groups. So I think the state should be cautious at that point because you don't want to add increased pressure on these new licensees. I think they should be given an opportunity to flourish. And 300 dispensaries in the state's a pretty good number from an access standpoint for the public and for tourists. So as far as planning, since there are no current opportunities to apply for any licenses as we sit today, these are some of the things I think that people should start working on now if you're interested in applying for those 2021 licenses. That, you know, probably a year from now, I imagine those application periods will begin to start, give or take a few months. You're going to need legal help, as Montel alluded to, how to structure the entity. You're going to have to understand the law and the rules. And I think Montel's PowerPoint, I would save it if I were you, because there's a lot of good information in there to help you with this particular point in your planning. You're going to need application help. You don't need a paid consultant. My firm does that. Other firms do that. I know when we originally applied back in 2014, it was scary to talk to all these different people that were going to help you with your application because it was very hard to figure out if they could really help you. I mean, the one thing that was certain is you were going to pay them, but I think a lot of them didn't deliver, weren't really capable of delivering, and were just selling the hot thing to sell. So I think I caution everybody to really do your homework on who you're hiring. And it's not always, you know, the cheapest person that's the best person to go with. But as long as you do your research, I think, and ask questions and really look at their backgrounds. I mean, do they have the knowledge and expertise that makes sense to where I can get a winning application? Because no one wants to waste money or time, and this is an exciting opportunity, and I want everyone to have the best shot to be as competitive as possible, because it is incredibly competitive. So besides understanding the best practice, so the second part of that is, the application will help you understand best practices. That's how a lot of these sections are scored, how to construct the substantive exhibits. The security plan is going to be looked at differently now than it was when all these applications were submitted. I've talked to several law enforcement experts, and everyone needs to look at, well, how were all these dispensaries breached in the city specifically, and some attempts in the suburbs, and what needs to be done for those that get awarded licenses. I think they need to address whatever they submitted and take another look at it. And certainly anybody that's submitting new applications for dispensary, craft grow, infuser, transporters, you really need to take a hard second look and do all of those things that might not make total business sense from this is going to cost X, and am I really ever going to need this type of protection? Because I think it's a different place now. The world's a different place. And I think that although everything seems a little calmer now, that it's very likely that, business owners have to deal with looting and rioting in the years to come. As far as production licenses, so that applies to all applications, dispensary, craft grow, infuser. I'm going to talk less about transporter, only because it's a non-competitive license. But there's some specific requirements in addition to what the dispensary applications require in terms of, I just lost my train of thought. Requirements, sorry. So for infuser license and craft grower license, you need a location. And that was a big barrier for a lot of the applicants because you had to secure one way or the other some kind of written document from a property owner that you had a right to use that property for a craft grower or for an infuser. And to further complicate things, you had to get, if there was a bank involved as a lender on that property, you had to basically get consent from that financial institution for the landlord to be able to authorize you to use it for that use, which I don't think happened. I talked to several banks, nobody would do that. So you ended up having a scarcity of available properties, and then the landowners that own the property free and clear or had private financing, or you somehow were able to get creative and navigate that, which you could through smart lawyering and strategic application strategies. But it's still an issue. And like a lot of people weren't able to apply. I think that the extensions were a saving grace for a lot of groups, because I think if these were due on March 16th, that there would have been a lot of groups that either had a location or didn't have a location. But even if they had a location, didn't have some of the zoning letter that was required from the municipality where that location was located. And there were time constrictions with that, and you had to get on certain calendars. And as COVID started to become more prevalent, it became harder to do all of that. So on all of this real estate stuff for the craft grow and infuser licenses, I'm not saying start today, but I mean, by the end of this year, I would kind of know where you want to go. In the beginning of next year, start working at it and start talking to the municipality and really start identifying locations, because that's the worst spot you can be in, is where you have all the other pieces of the application done. You've invested whatever you've invested, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, whatever the number is you've invested in the application process. And because you don't have a location, you really can't apply. It's a requirement. It's not scored, but it's a check the box thing. You're either in or you're out. So it was a big problem. Now with these delays, there's a further problem on the craft grow infuser side of the applications, is that all of my clients, I think all applicants that had locations where there was a landlord-tenant relationship or a seller-buy relationship, is that everybody had a period of time where they secured the property for, and they paid X for that. Maybe they paid $5,000 a month, maybe they paid $10,000 a month, maybe they paid a flat fee for a period of time. But I think that most of those contingency periods lapse probably July 30th. A month after the original award date. That's how we structured most of ours for our clients. And after that, you have to pay more. So there was an article in the Tribune or the Sun-Times just yesterday or 2 days ago about a social equity applicant, and they're going to have to come up with, I think, $10,000 more come either July 1 or August 1 to extend their right to have that property. if you lose that property, you have to update your application with the state and saying, Department of Agriculture, we lost this property, and you have to substitute with a new property. And if you don't, you could be disqualified potentially. I don't know exactly how they're going to handle that. I hope that there's a lot of understanding that this was a burdensome requirement that the dispensary application did not have. And I think it caught a lot of the social equity applicants a little bit off guard on really how hard it is to secure a location and get the zoning letter. So I hope I didn't talk too much about that, but I think it's really important that people understand that dispensaries did not require that, but the craft growers and the infusers did. And it's difficult, and you need all the time that you can possibly have to navigate that and get that documentation to protect the rest of your effort. So the next point, the key application requirements. So I'm just going to run through the generally, Montel talked about these in more detail in some aspects. I might talk on some different points, but these are for all the application types, dispensary, infuser, craft grow. I believe even this applies to the transporter. Social equity status. I told every client that came to me that if you can't satisfy that, then I don't want to help you because I don't think you can win. I think it was that important, especially on the dispensary side from a point standpoint. So that's key. I think it's I commend the sponsors for creating an environment to alter the status of ownership in Illinois cannabis. I think that it took a while to understand it and get my head around it, but I think it was a good way to go about it, and I'm hopeful that the award process plays out the way that the sponsors had intended. Security, obviously I mentioned that earlier. It's always important. It's one of the highest scored sections, and now it's even more important with everything that's happened going into an election year, next year, the year after. There's a lot of the issues I think society's facing are not easy to solve, and I think that it's going to be a more dangerous environment for high target locations like pharmacies and dispensaries, banks, places like that, electronic stores. But we're talking about cannabis here, so dispensaries specifically, and even craft grows I think are going to have to step it up. Previously, most of the cultivation centers are in rural areas. Ours is in Southern Illinois, 4 hours away. There was a requirement to go into Illinois State Police districts, so that the cultivation centers were geographically spread out throughout the state intentionally. The craft grow licenses and the infuser licenses weren't constructed that way, so all 40 could be in Cook County theoretically. I don't think that'll happen, but I expect, I think 75% are going to be in Cook and the Collars. So now you have, 30 out of 40 craft grow facilities that are in areas that were heavily impacted by this type of violence. So, and looting and rioting. So, it's less desirable of a target, I think. It's a little more complicated to figure out what's in those facilities versus a dispensary is very simple. They have finished products. You get to the vault, you get to the counters where the stuff is and the safes, and you take it. But security's absolutely different now than it was before. And I can't stress enough, I think that the regulators are really going to be looking when they're scoring these things at going the extra, not mile, but 10 miles on security, because I think they were already looking at everyone going the extra mile. So I think talk to the best security people you can find and get their opinions and talk to a bunch of them and kind of see what the new best practices are for securing these high target locations. Business plan, incredibly important. You have to demonstrate you have business experience. It doesn't have to be cannabis experience, but business experience. Pharmacy experience is great. For dispensaries, retail experience is great. Restaurant experience is great. Dealing with the public, being in a customer service oriented type environments will serve you well in operating a dispensary. A little bit different for craft grow and infusers. You need more technical knowledge. It's a little more complicated. But again, general business experience can definitely be extrapolated to, I have this experience in this industry or this industry, and because of that, I can easily, and I feel very comfortable operating a craft grow facility, and crossover experience is definitely counted and just as good as cannabis experience. Inventory record keeping, Again, very important. All the products that were stolen from all the dispensaries in the city last weekend, you're talking about millions of dollars worth of cannabis. The state needs to know what was taken, it needs to be accounted for. So there's inventory and record keeping is another key section that I think will be looked at even closer than it was before. So again, another section to whatever inventory and record keeping over the top procedures you can include in your application. I think you might set yourself apart from other applications. And I hope the stores recognize that. And it could, all of these little things, a point here or a point there, at the end of the day, you end up with 3 more points. That's the difference. Operations plan, what do you do when there's a riot situation with operations? No one really talked about that before. It was one of those things, we never experienced that in our lifetime. Now, all these security plans, what do you do to operations? How do your operations change going forward when certain things are going on around you in the city and in the state and the country? Do you change your hours? Do you go to a curbside pickup and close the store? I mean, there's all kinds of things people are going to need to think through to secure stores, not only through the security plan, but also in their operations plan. Employee training is paramount. Again, all training needs to be updated. What do you do in these situations? The past training didn't deal with that as much. And if it did on paper, I don't think it was done in actual training with humans. So again, this is another area that's very important, employee training and benefits. The cannabis industry is a fast growing industry. And most of the companies, I think, provide good benefits to their employees. So to be competitive in your application, you do the same. Principal officers, who are the owners? Who are the people that are going to be accountable to the state if something goes wrong with the license? This is the ownership group. Again, very important who the people are, the partners in the group, their backgrounds, their experience. They're scored as individuals and as a group. For the dispensaries, it was 30 points of the 250 were allocated to the principal officers. And then, again, there's legal requirements. Are you following all the there's a bunch of paperwork saying, I understand this is federally illegal, technical disclaimers that your applicant entity basically acknowledges and waives any liability that the state might have for giving you a license in a federally illegal business. I talked about so that applies to all licenses. And now specifically craft grow infusers, again, you need a location. As I was creating this outline, I said, Ross, you already said this in the previous one, but it's so important that I wanted to say it again. You need a location, and there's costs to secure that property. And the sooner you don't want to wait to the last minute, because like any negotiation, you're in a bad position if you're desperate. So if you're waiting till 2 weeks before the next application deadline for a craft grower, you're going to end up paying more to secure that location with a lot of landlords or property owners versus if you were ahead of the game and you had options. Once you don't have options, it ends up costing you more to secure what limited locations you have available. So can't start soon enough on this. Once you get that, identify the municipalities, you move on with the zoning letter. You might do it the reverse way. If you have good relationships in a certain municipality, you might talk to them first and say, hey, do you know of good locations? You make some introductions to me. I mean, you could always take that approach. And a lot of times, the municipality might have land themselves, might have property that they'd be interested, but they can for sure, I found in my experience doing this all over the country that most municipalities the zoning and planning and development staff are very helpful, and they'll send you maps and they'll, guide you to, where the use is appropriate. And even, like I said, take further steps and help connect you with, available real estate. So use those resources. They're happy to do it. It's economic development for their area. With craft grow and infuser, the substantive materials, the cultivation plan, the infusion plan, the security plan, the record keeping plan, all of that's just more complicated too. So these licenses take more time. Dispensaries buy a product and they sell a product. So you buy 100 of them, you track that 100, you sell that 100, and you're fine. Craft growers, they're doing extraction, they're turning leaf materials into oil. What's the conversion ratio? Everything's a lot harder to figure out from a cost standpoint, from a tracing standpoint, from a record keeping standpoint. There's a lot more moving parts. And I suspect, the state hasn't announced it yet, I suspect that there'll be far less applications for dispensary, for craft grow and infuser than dispensary. That's the way it was originally with the medical licenses, so I expect that to be the same. So hopefully, as Montel's hoping, and as a lot of my clients are hoping, that they win. Because that's why you do all this. It's a grueling process, but you know, the fun only begins when you get the license. Then you can really go through a grueling process where you have even more capital at risk in a very competitive market that's highly regulated, and some of the stuff doesn't even make sense. But in any event, I became in contact with a lot of people through my involvement in the medical cannabis industry, and through starting the consulting firm with some of my partners. You know, Lou Lang, former deputy majority leader in the House, is one of the partners in the firm. Jay Stewart, he was former director of professional regulation in 2014 under Governor Quinn when the original licenses were issued, and a few other, you know, key people in certain areas are partners in that firm. We've been approached by social equity applicants that are hopeful to be licensees about, hey, what about an industry association? What about, you know, how do we, you know, protect ourselves and look out, who's looking out for the social equity interests versus the existing industry interests, and they're organized and their association. So last year, I talked to former Representative Lang and my other partners in our consulting firm, and we told our clients, yeah, we could advise you on how to create an association to represent your social equity applicant licensee interests. So the Associated Cannabis Companies of Illinois was created last year. More is coming in the coming weeks as relates to that. The mission is to assist social equity applicant licensees. I'm on the advisory board. Representative Lang's on the advisory board. We have some other, Jay Stewart's on the advisory board, some other key people in the medical cannabis and even adult use cannabis industries as they're evolving. And there's a lot of issues that are going to be facing these licensees. The current industry was trying to pass legislation last session that, you know, I think some of the things they wanted to do was against the interests of social equity applicants. And there were some members, and I think the administration, and that bill didn't end up going through. I think that was a good thing for social equity licensees. Some of the things are, you know, zoning. There's a 1,500 foot rule that a dispensary can't be within 1,500 feet of another dispensary. The last bill, the industry was trying to reposition some of their existing stores into better locations. The bill didn't allow them to do that. They were trying to change it to the detriment of social equity applicants. So that bill didn't go through. So that's a key issue. Supply is another key issue. Right now, there's a supply issue. There's dispensaries that aren't owned by cultivation centers that have supply problems, where they can't get enough product to sell. So what's that going to look like for these new 75 social equity licensees that are going to get licenses this summer? And if they open this year, are they going to be able to have enough supply to be able to pay their bills? I mean, that's a real issue. We'll see what happens. And that ties into capital. You know, they're going to need potentially more capital if they can sell more than they can buy, if that makes sense. So these are just some of the issues that I think that social equity licensees and applicants, because, you know, there's more applications next year, so they're kind of very similar. But some will have, you know, have a vested interest because they have a license to protect and they actually have to operate, versus some are going to be more aspirational for the next period. But I think that the future licensees should get the benefit of a similar regulatory structure and opportunity. So I'll wrap up with that and kick it back over to.
All right. Thank you, Ross. That was very informative. And I think from the standpoint of how this is all flowing, I think it's helping people to understand it is an industry that's going to require a lot of attention, a lot of expertise. But once you get in it, it can be something that can be very, very profitable, but also can be very beneficial to communities that have been impacted. So we're going to go into our next presenter, who is with the organization at the state that is responsible for making sure that this runs correctly. And that's Mr. Matt Simpson. He is the African American Business Development Manager with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Matt is a person who is very, very committed and with regards to what he has done. He's from Rockford. He has been involved in economic development and community development, and now with the state, he's really doing, really working hard and making things happen. He's a good person to know. So, Matt, we're gonna, as they say in the baseball lingo, you're up.
All right, I appreciate you, Brother Sherman. Good afternoon. Now it's officially 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm gonna share my screen real quick, but what was I supposed to send you my PowerPoint, or is it okay if I share my screen?
Go ahead and share your screen. Can you do that?
Okay. So it's saying host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay. Does that allow you now?
Okay, let me see. Okay, yep, there we go.
All right.
Thank you, brother. So what I'm gonna do is get us right here. And I'm gonna turn this on for you. Can everybody see that?
Perfect.
Okay. My name is Matt Simpson. I'm with the Illinois Department of Commerce, Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. We call it OMI for short. Whole bunch of acronyms we throw at you all the time. As you probably already know, the Department of Commerce is the economic development agency of the state, and that is business attraction, business retention and expansion, small business support, entrepreneurship support. There's a lot of different agencies inside of the Department of Commerce, I should say a lot of different offices in the Department of Commerce that helps to advance that economic development work. There is the International Trade Office, there's the Tourism and Visitors Bureau, there's the Regional Economic Development teams, a lot of different things going on to help advance economic development. My office is one of them, and it's the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment. And we work in tandem to advance those higher level goals related to job creation, business development, entrepreneur support. And we have a special emphasis on those businesses that are minority, woman-owned, veteran-owned, and individuals with disabilities. So my focus is African American business development. I'm on a team of people. We also have a Latinx business development manager, a women's business development manager, and we also support, as I said, other minority groups, veterans, and individuals with disabilities. And also inside of the Office of Minority Economic Empowerment is we're helping to facilitate the cannabis program. Specifically, what you see in front of you, the Social Equity Loan Program, and that whole social equity piece as it relates to technical assistance, information sharing, and financial support. So we had a really great presentation today. I just want to appreciate these brothers, Montel and Ross. Great, dynamic, very detailed information. I honestly appreciate you going into that detail, because there's a distinction between the Department of Commerce and the licensing agencies. You know, the government likes to throw a lot of stuff at you. The Department of Commerce is not the licensing agency. We do not provide the business licenses for the dispensaries, craft grow facilities, transporter, and infusers. The license comes from the Illinois Department of Agriculture or the
Way to go to remember all that.
So, Montel and Ross did a great job of explaining to you how to go about pursuing a cannabis business license. There were windows of time opened up. We did a lot to try to make sure people had technical assistance. In the coming rounds, we're going to do even more. We partnered with some groups to do workshops in person, virtual seminars, because it's very, very daunting. This is a completely new industry. And we got 2 lawyers here explaining to you this whole process. They are equipped and skilled. I wish you the best of luck on your application as well, but not everybody has those type of resources and support. So our agency, the Department of Commerce, we tried our best to roll out a set of technical assistance, workshops, and webinars, explaining similar things to what we heard today, in addition to what I'm about to discuss now. So right now, the window for applying for licenses has closed. COVID-19 has delayed those announcements. I really do want to apologize for those delays. A lot of people, I get emails a lot myself. People just want to know what's the status? Where are we at in the process? I just want to apologize for the delay. They're trying to make sure it rolls out the right way. And COVID-19 has thrown a wrench in a lot of things. But perhaps some of those applicants did not know about the Social Equity Loan Program. Now, if you've applied for a license, you can apply for the Social Equity Loan Program. There are some stipulations, and we'll talk about that now. But this is the financial assistance platform that was created to support those individuals who qualify as social equity applicants. Now we're going to go into a little bit. What is the loan program? It's just an overview. This is a low interest loan for those individuals who are social equity applicants. And typically, you can get up to $250,000 for dispensary and infusers, $500,000 for craft grow, $50,000 for transporters. Now, when you apply and you submit your information, that's when the numbers are finalized, but this is just to give you an idea of what you could apply for and expect to receive. I'll show you a slide for what the expenses can be used for. And I'm happy to share this with you, Sherman, man. You can get this out to members.
Yes, we'll have it on our website after
Okay.
today.
Okay, and you won't be able to get the funds until you get the license. The whole point is just to support the licensed businesses. This isn't a loan fund for those support industries or for those ancillary services that are related to the cannabis business. This is a loan fund for Illinois licensed cannabis businesses. And you see the IDFPR and IDOA are the ones that provide those licenses. So this is just a slide that explains what are the uses, allowable uses, and uses that are not allowable. And it pretty much lays it out pretty clearly for you. Let me move my box out of the way here. So rent, payroll, purchase equipment, inventory, a lot of those operating expenses. It's a very costly enterprise. It's a very financially burdensome sometimes enterprise. It's a very new industry. We see a lot of opportunity, but for some people, it would be hard, a heavy lift to make this a successful enterprise. So we're trying to do what we can to stand up a resource to help those social equity applicants specifically. You see the potentially allowable DCEO with the DCEO approval, that's the build out and construction. So that is just like, as you apply, you just want to include those plans, what you want to do, why you need the funds for that, and then they'll make a unique decision for you. What's not allowed, as you can see, food, entertainment, travel, these are things that are not directly related to what we see most necessary for you being able to successfully operate that business. Now, this is just a process for how the loan submission works. You can see it goes all the way down. Once you get the loan, you'll need to be doing some reporting, that final row on the bottom. So just be prepared to share news and updates about, what's happening with the funds. And that's really that's not necessarily to hinder you or, bog you down with red tape. We really want to make sure that you are successful, and through regular communication, making sure we're helping you respond to challenges as they come up, things like that. Now, this is just breaks down the application. There's a uniform application document that you can find online. The beauty is the things that our two presenters previously discussed, those different sections, those different questions that you need to answer, those requirements, a lot of that is mirrored in this application here. So when you apply for your license, you probably already answered a lot of these questions. So it won't be too cumbersome for you to respond to the questions that are asked via this social equity loan application process. That's the best part. We do want a lot of information for you, but a lot of it is pretty much mirroring what you've already submitted to apply for a license. At the top is just general information. Of course, the name listed here should be the name on your license, just to be consistent. Contact information is crucial. We want to be able to communicate with you, and if that information is wrong, we've seen it happen in the past. People are upset because they haven't heard from us, and what happened is they gave us the wrong number or a wrong email address. So we always try to remind people, make sure that that contact information is accurate. And like I said, we'll require a lot of the similar information that you submitted to the licensing agency, specifically as it relates to your social equity status. Now, these three narratives here is where you really get the chance to tell your story. This is how you demonstrate that you are a social equity applicant, that you have been impacted by the, you have a cannabis conviction on your record, or a family member of yours has a cannabis conviction on your record. You live in one of the designated disadvantaged areas. There's a map on the website. Or, if you're an employer, you commit to employing individuals that meet those two criteria. So you don't have to fit into all three of those, but one of those three needs to be met. And in these narratives, you want to describe what that means, how you do fit into those social equity applicant categories. And this is where you have a 3-page limit. So you just want to tell your story, what has been the impact on you and how this could make things different for you. Number 2 is the financial narrative, how the business is ready to operate. What exposure have you had? What skill sets do you have? And that's around the financial piece, to operate a business, that planning. Narrative number 3 is the need for funds. Do you see yourself in need of a loan, of a line of credit? What type of support are you seeking? And how that support will help you realize the plan that you've submitted. So there you go. Now, like I said, a lot of these communicate with the exhibits from your other license. So some of this can just kind of be brought over and submitted to answer the questions here. What are the services being offered? What is the project itself? Are you acquiring a building? Are you doing a build out? Are you sourcing, inventory? Are you staffing up? Are you, what is that? What is the project? Just describe that. Give us a rough idea for your timeline. Are you hitting your dates? And I know that COVID-19 has impacted a lot, so you can even just clarify that if you're submitting your application now. We want to see some tax returns for the principal officers of the business. And you can even provide 0 income affidavits if they are applicable. Just as much information as you have. We just want to know about the people who are applying and making sure everything's on the up and up. Going to need to see documentation for the business. articles of incorporation, OAs, bylaws, any partnerships in place. We want to see those documents. And then the proof of ownership. Let me see here. Yeah, so the financials, you know, like if you've been in business before, we just want to see how business has been going. And if not, you just need to tell us that. And if you have any commitments, financial commitments from other parties, this is where you can include that. 5-year projections, just want to see how do you see things breaking down. Startup information, that's where you just kind of demonstrate that you have not been in business and this is your first stab at it, and how you intend to ensure you will be successful as a startup. We need to see that zoning. Again, it's something that you've already submitted as part of your license application. We just need to see you've gone through the process at the local level to get the right permissions to operate that business. Diversity plan. What does your staff look like? How do you see yourself interacting with your community as a business, and engaging with the community as it exists, the diverse members of your community, any outreach you intend to be doing. Those are the type of things you want to put into your diversity plan. Any machinery you'll need if you need it. Who are the managers? Any records? This is important, just to records that you have. Like I said, those letters of commitment. Are you getting support from anybody? Are you getting sources of funds from any other parties or institutions? And how does that impact the mix of ownership? Letters of support are good. You want to talk to other organizations, neighboring businesses, parties, stakeholders that you feel could help make a case for your application. And then, for a transporter, just a relationship or connection that you have with a dispensary, craft grower, or refuser. Just even if it's just a letter of intent, a contract, something stating that you have a connection and will be doing business, or we have something lined up to operate your transportation business. You want to sign it? When actually we're not even printing and signing right now. We're doing all electronic submissions as we are sheltering in place. And this is how you submit, only accepting electronically. And you want to, there's a lot of information that we're asking for. So a lot of people create a zip file to shrink it down, or they just break down the submission into multiple folders. Want to make sure everything's labeled properly and clearly, so there's no confusion. And this is the contact information for our office if you have any questions. We have an awesome young lady who's administering the loan program and the cannabis loans. Right now, she's working through a lot of loan applications, but we're still accepting them. And we're supporting her. So we're making sure we respond to questions as quickly as we can to make sure you get feedback and responses from us. So that's what I have. Thank you for your time. Sherman, I just appreciate you creating this platform because, as I've said, the businesses, especially in our community, the businesses are really positioned to leverage resources and power and make a difference. You're investing in a storefront, you're changing the neighborhood, you're creating jobs for people. Maybe you're able to support and donate to different causes. So the stronger our businesses are, the stronger our communities will be. And what you guys are doing at the Quad County Chamber is really, really important. I'm happy to be here to support you anytime.
All right, we appreciate that, Matthew. We will continue to work to make, as we say, make things happen. So, but again, great information. And again, I'm reminding our viewers and listeners that this will be available recording. You go to our website, which is www.quadcountyAAchamber.org. Again, www.quadcountyAAchamber.org. Now, our next presenter is Miss Edie Moore. She is the Executive Director of Chicago Normal, which is an advocacy organization. And we wanted to bring her on to, because she's got a great amount of experience. And this is just going to lead us into our next one. That's going to be our next webinar that's going to be on June 25th, where we're going to bring people who are in the business, African Americans who are in the business, who've been in the business, who can talk about it so people can hear from people and then use them as mentors, as someone they could get information for, because our big thrust is to get more African Americans involved in this industry as owners. And so, Ms. Moore, you want to take it away and give us your best shot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jenkins, for having me on. This is a very, very technical presentation today, as it should be, because you're talking about the applications. The application process is very onerous, and we make no bones about that. But if you want the honey, you've got to go through the bees, right? So my background, I come to the cannabis space from a couple of different ways. In 2015, like Ross, my team applied for and won a license to grow and dispense. I actually personally never got a chance to do that because we ran out of funding. I had to take on a partner who was then the majority partner. Our team was majority Black. That turned into a majority white team. That white team came from another state and said, okay, thanks Black people. You guys did a great job. You can go have a seat now. And so I vowed to never let that happen again, to me or to anyone that I know personally. And so in 2017, well, between that time and 2017, my mom became a patient. I also became a patient, and we realized that there were not enough people in our communities who understood that program, how to be a patient, what a patient was, what medical marijuana was, that whole thing, that whole license process in the medical realm just kind of went under the radar in our communities. There were very few people who knew about it, let alone knew how to apply. By the time we had reached that point where we were selling our license and taking on that partner, we had already spent, our team collectively had spent $2.5 million, and still hadn't even gotten open. So
Still hadn't gotten open.
Still had not gotten open. By the time we left the team, we were out of money. That's why we brought on. That's why we had to bring on a partner. We couldn't get open, even though we had just found a location. There was a long story with that. But in 2017, when we realized that there were still people in our communities who didn't know how to be patients, that there were jobs out there, that there was going to be opportunities to be owners. We had to be in our bonnet about that, like nobody's business, and we created an organization called Chicago Normal. Normal stands for the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And it's the oldest advocacy organization in the country. They started in 1970. And our chapter is about one of about 180 chapters. But our chapter is very different, where we are specifically and intentionally focused on our own communities that look like us. And so that's what we do. We were actually, Matt, we were one of the groups who won the grant to provide technical assistance for social equity applicants. We did that in a virtual realm. That was just one of the what we thought would be the best thing to do for the entire state, where anybody could come and watch our videos and see them day and night um, whenever they could, because we understood that, you know, there are not a lot of people. Anybody who's trying to apply for this is already working. They already have a family. They're not sitting around on a ton of money um, with nothing else to do. So we recognized that we wanted to meet people where they were. Um, Also, Montel, you mentioned that Netflix um, show that talks about cooking with cannabis. One of the winners of that show, episode 6, it was Manny Mendoza. He's a very good friend of ours, a member of Chicago Normal. He advocates with us. And so what we do is we teach people about this business, about the industry. A lot of us are not, you know, attorneys or down in the weeds, pun, um, on this, but we want to make sure that they are making the right connections and that they are not being running into predators, because they're definitely out there. We want to make sure that we are holding forums where they can get information, just like you're doing right now today. So that is our mission. That is what we do every day. We are also we look for funding to be able to do this work. We're always in Springfield, except this session, we were not there. But we're working right there with the legislators to make sure that we are first ones to hear what's going on, and we're at those tables so that we can give our input for that. So we're out there trying to advocate for our constituents, for people who want to enter this industry as owners, but also as employees. There has been a lot of information that we've been hearing and that we've been working on, that employees are not feeling heard and taken care of as far as in response to the crisis. A lot of them are feeling dare I say, in dangerous situations, finding themselves in dangerous situations um, at the hands of their employers who don't look like them. Some of them are feeling like they are not being heard when they are trying to process everything that's going on in their own communities, because their employers don't look like them and don't have those experiences. And so we're there for them for that. And so that's our work. We're also teaching folks how to engage with their communities, because a lot of the applicants that you find who are social equity applicants, they want to locate their businesses in their communities. They want to be where they are. They want to be where their people are. And so we talk to them about how to go out and engage their communities. That's one of the things that was my role when I was on the original team back in 2015, was to talk to the community about cannabis. And I was so surprised when not everybody wanted cannabis in their community. I was like, wait, you don't want this? Why not? It's great. But it's true. So just because we think like we think doesn't mean that the collective thinks like that. There's a lot of harm and a lot of trauma that surrounds cannabis in the communities in particular. So you've got to understand how to talk to those folks and how to meet them where they are and give them the information that they need in order to make you welcome make you welcome with cannabis in their community. We teach them how to make sure that you're going to be a good neighbor when you locate your business there. You want to make sure that they understand that you are there to not to push your ideas on them, but to be heard and to be part of that community. Let's see, what else do I have? Oh, the other thing that we're working with are the local municipalities. We are definitely in those conversations about zoning, and to make sure that the members of the Black Caucus and the City of Chicago City Council understand the social equity, how to help social equity businesses, and not just licenses. We want to make sure that they're looking after and making a way for ancillary businesses as well, because not everybody's going to get a license. Right now, there's only 75 of them this round, right? So a lot of folks are employees. A lot of folks are coming to this as other professional services, people who are in this, not in the space, can transfer what they're already doing into the space. And we want to make sure that we're making a way for that, and also making sure that the municipalities are recognizing that there are going to be a lot of new people who are working in the cannabis space in your city, right? So do they have a NAC code? Do they have NAC code? Montel, what was the NAC code? National AICS.
Oh, yeah,
Next.
okay.
Next
Yeah,
code,
right,
NAC code,
right.
right.
I couldn't
So
get to you quick enough. I'm sorry.
I know, right? So like there isn't a NAC code for cannabis, right? So we need to have those kinds of discussions. So those are the tables that we're at. Those are the things that we're trying to work on to make a way, to make a pathway, to make on-ramps for folks who are trying to get a license, for folks who want to just tangentially transition what they already do into the space, and for those folks who want to work safely,
All
and for
right.
people who want to advocate, because there's room. You can help me.
There's room everywhere, right?
Yes, that's right.
All right. Well, Edie, thank you for that insight. And at this point, we're going to open it up for questions. So I'm going to kick it off for us in terms of the questions. And everyone, you can jump in, and if you have questions of all of our different panelists, that would be helpful also. But the first one I have is, from what I'm hearing, what is the overall cost of getting into this industry? I mean, I heard Edie say, up to, what's that, $1.5 million, 2 million?
2.5.
Okay,
That's what
2.5
we
million.
spent in 2015 dollars.
Oh, okay. So,
And we didn't get open yet.
so what is the overall cost that a person could be looking at in terms of getting into this industry, regardless of whether it's
I
dispensing,
think you should ask
cultivating?
Ross. He the one got a license.
All right.
I think it's also like, what are you paying for it too? Because when you were paying 2.5 million, how much of that
Yes,
was?
that's very, very true.
You know what I
Like
mean?
back in 2015, and I think Ross touched on this too, is, everybody, there were all kinds of consultants at the table trying to say, yeah, we know how to do that. Yeah, you can pay us to do that. We had so many attorneys, it was ridiculous. You don't need that now. Thank you for that, Matt. Yeah.
Ross, what do
Yeah,
you
no,
think?
I'm thankful for coming back to it, because I forgot to talk about that a little bit in my presentation. It was on my list and it escaped me. So I think when people say things like, what did the cost go towards? That's like the key. Matthew, kind of asked that question. So I think, let's just figure you have a license. I'm talking about like post-license, like once I get the license, what's it going to cost me to get up and running with my dispensary, craft grower, infuser, transporter, that question? That's what we're trying to answer?
Right.
Okay. So I think, real estate's the big variable in dispensaries for sure. So assuming you can get a lease, assuming there's not a big acquisition cost, because it's hard to get financing still from banks for cannabis uses. Hopefully the federal government cleans that up and allows banking, then it would be easy. Then you can go to a bank and get a regular commercial loan, different story. You can't do that right now. So, assuming you can get a lease or some kind of rental agreement, or a 20% private loan to acquire property outside of traditional bank financing. Assuming you have that solved, you should be able to open a dispensary for $500,000 once you have the license. I mean, if you want to do like a really nice build out and do glass and get really fancy, I mean, you could spend upwards of $1 million to do the construction, the build out, have enough cash to acquire inventory, and enough cash to operate. But we've opened stores for, when we opened the store in Effingham, we spent, I don't know, $400,000 but the owner of the location was a contractor. We share with the VA clinic there. So he built the VA clinic. There was retail space behind it. He did a build to suit, and we just did a payment. It was the best deal ever. And then, you know, it cost us X per month. We had no real estate construction costs. So it cost us like $350 to, you know, security costs $100,000. I mean, now it might be a little bit more.
So basically, it's one of those situations where if you've got a connection, or you've got a situation like what you had down in Effingham, where the dollar amount is going to vary, as was said, in terms of what you bring into it, but also what you'll be able to work out, especially on the real estate aspect. Is that
Yeah,
what I'm
also
correctly?
a lot of people who we talk to already own their property, particularly for craft grow. So
Yeah.
they're looking, that's one of the reasons that we got involved in that zoning discussion, because they own property that is perfectly suited for a craft grow, but the there have been some changes at the city of Chicago recently that we didn't agree with, that knocked those properties
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
just
We were victimized by that, by the way.
yes. Oh my God. Then we should talk. So some of these folks that already own a building, they have to go find another building that's too big for what they need, you know, and triple the cost. So we didn't feel like that was helping social equity applicants at all. So we are definitely at the table in discussion with trying to change that, Montel.
Well, let me share this with you too. The Will Group, my company, is in the process of building a $7.1 million facility in K-Town at 825 South Kilpatrick. And we've got a 60,000 square foot facility. And we can easily custom fit that for a cannabis growth operation. Matter of fact, we ran into the problem. We wanted to use our own building, but just like you just said, all of a sudden somebody changed the rules on us, and our property was not zoned for that purpose.
Right.
So we're in the process at this point on June 16th. We're going before the zoning committee in an attempt to rezone the property to an M22 that will allow for cannabis-based business operation.
Right. And how much is that rezoning?
Oh my God, the rezoning, the application fee for us was $1,075 because you know how that all works, and then
That's Chicago.
Well, that's just the fee. So
right.
for a rezoning, that's big money.
Yeah. And then I had to, I had some professionals involved, and our planner and all that stuff. So it was about a little under 10 grand.
Well, we got a question. We got a question from one of our participants. It says, "Can the social equity loan be used for licensing fee?"
Yes.
Really?
Okay. So I'm
looking up. I'm looking up because my wheel's still turning. I think that it can. Let me just clarify that.
But also, I want to ask. There was another thing that I saw in the bill, and it was that there were going to be, you could get a social equity applicant could get up to $250,000 grant. What happened to that?
You know what? I haven't combed the bill, man. So I can try to get some clarification on the grant for you, but I can't tell you off the top of my head right now.
I think I might be able to speak to that. Matt, you can, once you get back to your desk, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So I don't think the loan can be used for application fee because those loans are given to are given to licensees. So once you get a license, you can use your letter saying, you can use that letter saying, I applied for the loan and I qualify for the loan, and I'm gonna use the money toward things once I get a license. But the loan is only for licensees. Now the grant is something different. That DCEO grant is what we received. The grant was to provide technical assistance and other things. The applicants there are no grants for the applicants.
Right.
Well, okay. Now, unless there's some changes to the bill, but Section 7-10, Cannabis Business Development Fund, it says to, I guess, people it says to provide grants to qualified social equity applicants to pay for ordinary and necessary expenses to start and operate a cannabis business establishment permitted by this act.
Well, they didn't make those available yet.
And you know, I think the operative word there, you said base business. And I'm under the way I would read that, you're already in business. It's not like you've already paid for your licensing and now you're in business and now I give you a loan. But so you got to do all that upfront money, you've got to come up with that money.
There's a
Okay.
distinction between application fees and actual license fee, which would be post-license, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe.
Which I
Well,
don't
that's a good point.
But
Mhm.
clearly, Edie's right. It can't be used for application fees because
Right.
you can't get it until you have a license.
Yeah.
But once you get the award, can you use it for that first 40 grand? I think you have to pay for a dispensary.
Yeah,
for
you
the
probably could use
license,
it for that.
Mm-hmm.
or that even
Okay.
subsequent
Yeah.
renewal, you know.
That was a question that another question that they were talking about the $40,000 licensing fee. So we're saying
Yep.
that can't be used to pay for that.
I'm
Sherman,
getting clarification on that. I'm getting clarification for you.
Okay.
you want me to touch on the craft grow expenses real quick?
Yes, please.
I didn't before. Okay, so back to the last topic. I talked about dispensaries. We talked about that a little bit. So if you have a craft grow, again, take away real estate costs. It's great to hear from Edie that several people she knows actually own the real estate because that solves a lot of problems. But you know, for a build out to do it appropriately, assuming that you're going to do all functions, meaning you're going to grow, you're going to extract, you're going to process, you're going to have a kitchen, you're going to do it all. You probably need, and again, you're limited to 5,000 square feet of canopy paste to start. So I think that's the number that I'm talking about. And then those 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, that is be a number to build out those rooms.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see how you get it done for less than, $2 million, give or take, just because the lights are expensive, the HVAC equipment's expensive to do it right.
Yes.
I mean, the market's competitive. So
Yeah.
what I would not suggest is going cheap and producing a product that's not up to par, because Illinois has some of the best products in the country, if not the world, really. There's wide variety, high quality, there's all different tiers of it. So there's places to fit in, but
Hey, Ross, they would be weeded out very quickly.
exactly.
There we go with that weed again.
So that's what I think that, and then beyond that, you might need another $500,000 to $1 million per expansion. But hopefully you're cash flowing and you can use some of the money that you're making when you get the green light from ag to increase your canopy square footage. Infuser would be less. I think you can probably get an infuser up for $1 million, maybe even less. That to me is that's the least barrier to entry from a financial aspect out of the competitive licenses. And then a transporter, I imagine you could start a transporter for $250,000, 150 grand. If you can finance the vehicle, maybe 100 grand,
That's not
maybe 50. I don't know, but for sure, 100,000 or less if you can get financing for the vehicle, which I think you can, which is different than real estate. So that's another opportunity. You can go buy a vehicle and really not even get into what you're using it for, and then do a post conversion that now you have that vehicle financed, and it minimizes your startup costs.
The one thing that we really haven't talked about is insurance for those types of businesses. And, we haven't got to that point yet, whether or not we'll have to self-insure or if we can find a company that will insure cannabis-related business.
There's insurance. There's all the insurance products are pretty much out there.
Mm-hmm. And I thought about more, but for the transport, I don't know.
Well, there was another question with regards to our social equity applicants. Are they not all people of color?
You do not
You
have
say social equity applicant, but and so I can answer, but I want one of you guys because it's very interesting.
No, you
Yeah,
don't have
social equity applicant does not necessarily mean a person of color.
no.
That's right.
Okay. And the other question is, once you win a license, how long do you have in order to start your business?
I
That's
can
good.
take it if
Go ahead, anyone.
12 months to You have 12 months to open a dispensary.
And now you said dispensary.
Correct.
Is it? Okay. All right. So there's different one for cultivation, transportation, or does it apply?
I don't have the others off the top of my head. Maybe somebody else knows.
I don't
look
know
at-
that.
I don't have them off the top of my head either. I know that you've got to be under construction or something like that within 180 days. Isn't that right, Montel? Something
Yeah,
like that.
you have to be under construction, but I also know there's going to be some other triggers associated with taxes that you're supposed to be coming due with, et cetera. So the longer you're out there, the more you're going to be spending your own money for business-related functions.
So, you know, with all that you've discussed today, I think all of you have provided a great deal of information to help people to understand what this whole industry is about. And it's definitely not for those with the faint of heart. It is one that, but there are people out there that can help you, and you guys are part of that crew. And we want to thank you for being on our webinar today. We're at 12:45, and what we're gonna, I'm letting everyone know that go to our website. We will have everyone's contact information if you want to reach out to them after this webinar, but also to be able to, you have the recording that you can listen to of today's webinar. And our next webinar will be Thursday, June 25th, where the topic will be, so you want to start a cannabis business or contracting opportunities. And there we're going to bring people who are in actual owners. And I want to make sure that people have what they need to understand from people who are like you guys. You're in it, but someone who's running an operation currently who can provide some insights into people, and then other contracting opportunities. So that's what the Quad County African American Chamber is all about in terms of providing information and resources. And I want to again thank all of you, all of our panelists for being with us today. Montel, Ross, Matthew, Edie, great job, guys. Appreciate you.
And I
We'll
did
stay in
find that. I
contact.
did find that answer to that
You did.
question.
My man. Way to go.
License fees are not an eligible use of loan funds.
Okay, they are not.
No.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Thank you.
Well, all right. Well, again,
Matt.
everyone,
And then
thank you.
I did put that FAQ document into the chat. So there's a number of questions that are answered in the document related to that loan. I put it in the chat. I also put my contact info. Happy to answer questions related to cannabis or any other business development questions.
Well, if you guys want to add your information into the chat, feel free to go ahead and do that. I won't close out until, if you want to do that, this specific email or phone number you want to put in there, you can be able to do that. And then we'll also transfer it over and put it on our website. But again, thank you everyone for participating. The Quad County African American Chamber, we are working diligently here in the area. Today, we're launching a emergency grant program to COVID affected businesses who are members of the Quad County African American Chamber. That's being launched today. Our members will receive dollars to help them to get through this effort, and we're working in conjunction with the City of Aurora, where we started what is called a stable fund to help, again, those who were affected by COVID. And then we also just the other night, Tuesday night, through the City Council, we launched a Restore program. As some of you know, the City of Aurora was hit by some civil unrest, and we had a number of about 60 businesses that were affected. So we started a grant program, and we're raising money from companies and individuals. And so you can go to our website. We're working with Invest Aurora Regional Chamber of Commerce, Aurora Regional Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, with regards to raising money to help those who were affected by the civil unrest. So there's a lot of things going on, but we're going to continue to work so that we can be able to help grow profitable and successful African American businesses. So again, I see most of you have put your information on there. Oh, there was one question from one of our participants that said, what is K-Town? So somebody, somebody go ahead and
I'll
They're
jump
from
in.
the Quad Cities. They don't know that. I mean, the Quad Counties.
K-Town, it's a spot on the west side of Chicago because all the streets begin with K. So
Right.
it affectionately was called K-Town. So Costner,
Right.
Kilpatrick, I mean,
Keeler.
yeah.
No, I'm from the South Side, Woodlawn,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
this friend that sent this text, I wanted one of you
And
guys, so he
unfortunately,
wouldn't think
you know,
I
in
was
the past, it
giving
had
him the
a
business.
very bad reputation because it was a high crime area, et cetera. So we're trying to get in there and change that around.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, and everyone who's participated. And again, we'll see you on Thursday, June 25th, for our third and final installment of the virtual cannabis fairs. All right, everyone, have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.